Good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today for the new season of presentations and events from CW. My name is Sally Berkery. I'm the Managing Director of CW. As we all know, success on the high street is no longer the only marker for the success of a brand, and digital presence is no longer a secondary thought. It's a lucrative revenue driver, with brands benefiting from their most profitable margins, all whilst having complete creative control over how their brand is perceived. Today, I'm delighted to welcome back CW partners Bolt Digital for the second instalment in our exclusive series of D2C masterclasses. And today we're joined by Luke Courtney-Smith, who's the Managing Director of Bolt Digital, and Tim Hyland, who is Creative Director. They're going to walk us through the ways in which you can reimagine your brand to ensure D2C success, from economics to creative. They will also demonstrate the importance of the right SKU or SKU assortment, on-site presence, and the informed strategic steps that you can take to promote loyalty and ultimately brand affinity. Going D2C is not as simple as you think, as you all know. So please do use this opportunity while you have them to ask the experts any questions that you may have via the Q&A panel at the bottom, and we can answer these at the end. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you both now. Thank you.
There we are. Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Sally, and thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. So, reimagining your brand for direct to consumer. So why? I think because you guys are on this call, a lot of you will know this and start feeling this pain. So ultimately, the way consumers shop has fundamentally changed. This has been, I guess, accelerated by the events of the last year and a half, 2 years, but the trend was already happening and picking up. And consequently, retailers, wholesalers, legacy, traditional brands have to face this challenge of their consumers transitioning to a new way of buying. And consequently, they have to shift a new route to market strategy, basically, either tack it onto what they're currently doing or try and pivot more aggressively. So the consumers are leading the charge and brands are trying to keep up with this charge. And what you're seeing is the challenger brands start outpacing the legacy kind of heritage brands, which is frustrating because actually, a legacy heritage brand is like a big, massive cruise ship. There's a lot of people involved. It's big, it's heavy, there's a lot of processes. To do something different takes a long time. So moving that cruise ship takes a while and it takes a lot of planning before it can even begin to turn. Whereas the challenger brands, the D2C native brands, are like little agile sailing boats that can turn and pivot in a direction that basically works for them. And they can look at what's happening in the market. They can look at what's happening in the trends across creative, performance, customers, all this good stuff, and they can turn and they can start converting what can be at sometimes a relatively kind of fickle audience. So these challenger brands are starting to outpace retail, and retail needs to kind of adopt an agile mindset to try and keep up. However, the thing that we get faced with a lot as a kind of D2C growth agency is that it sounds relatively easy. You've got huge amounts of validation, product market fit in retail on the high street, and you just think, well, I'll just pop some stuff online and sell the same stuff as I do in my store or in this person's store online. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. There are a lot of pains that we see brands go through, some of which, but not all of which, are listed out here. Fundamentally, it's a different business model and route to market. The growth happens differently. The amount of data analysis you need to do is different. The team is almost completely different to the team you would have if you were going down a more traditional route to market. The economics stack up differently. Your infrastructure is different. Your fulfillment center is different, and your platforms you're operating on are different. So actually, when we speak to big brands, beauty or otherwise, these are the pain points that they're feeling and going, how on earth do we solve these pain points? And actually what we're going to talk about today is the kind of beginning process of how to do that. When obviously you get it right, and I think Tim Tash touched on this in last month's webinar, you can see the kind of explosive growth and exit valuation that these brands can achieve. Now, these brands are young brands. They're 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 years old, and they're achieving great valuations, great exits or partial exits. So it's a very buoyant market at the moment. It's a very competitive market at the moment. But if you are nailing it and you're working with all those things we touched on in this slide, then you're looking at a serious kind of economic disruption and a very beneficial one. So that's in short why a lot of brands that we speak to are looking at direct to consumer. And I think the first thing you have to start doing is changing your thinking of how you take a brand and product to market, or how you take your existing brand and product to market. So in a very reductive way, this is how sometimes we see it played out to us when brands come to work with us. They've basically identified an opportunity in the market. It might be a pain point that they experience. It might be something that their friends experience. They go, right, I've got this pain point. I'm going to solve it with this product. Or I found an amazing ingredient and I'm going to put it into this bottle and I'm going to create the product and then sell it. So they come up with the idea. They then create the product or the product range. They then take it to the audience, market to the audience, and then they start testing and learning. What we think you actually need to do, and what we're going to take you through today, looks a little bit more like this. So you're identifying the opportunity, but then you're doing deep competitor research, you're building an audience, you're validating an audience through some of the data stuff that we're going to talk about today. You're wrapping in direct consumer trends, which we're also going to go through today. And you're focusing on the Holy Grail metrics, which is what the last month's seminar was all about, which is basically the economic model of a D2C brand. After all of that, you're then going to create your product / D2C SKU, and then the fun starts. And then you're going to take it to market, start testing and learning and scaling your brand. But before you do any of that, you're going to go through this entire process. So we're going to walk through these steps in a little bit more detail. So step number 1. Deeply knowing your competitors. So I'm going to pass over to Timmy for this one.
This is something that I'm sure that everybody in this Zoom call would have had to do at one stage. Get together a creative matrix, put lots of logos in there. So this is a food brand that was pivoting D2C. And the one thing is that it's overwhelming the amount of competitors. So we would have walked through all the performance elements of these, the creative, the type of messaging that these brands would have gone for. We found out, we created the matrix by talking to the brand in question that we're working with, finding out what types of thing and what type of place in the market that they wanted to belong to. So created a whole spectrum of competitors, which then once you start to whittle that down, start to actually think about what's authentic to you, what's unique about you, actually the level of competitors in your space go down quite significantly. So the blanker the matrix, the better. And so in this particular case, we started off with all of those food brands in this slide. We went through several different filters of whether they had gone direct to consumer or whether they were doing a similar thing or similar messaging or what type of creatives, how were they talking, all those type of things. And actually it came down to the fact that there were several places in the market that they could fit and we could explore. So yeah, that's what that rather terrifying matrix looks like.
I think as well to this point, like be ruthless with yourself in the sense that like where actually are your points of differentiation, because consumers are completely and utterly drowned in adverts for new brands that solve the latest and greatest things. So be ruthless with yourself when you do this exercise. So the real value add that comes with the competitor research is you will start to notice trends in your competitors around these pillars here. So the pillars around product, creative, performance, the gamification, so the experience the customer's going through when they're interacting with that brand, what the website looks like, feels like, what funding they're doing, how they're supercharging this growth. Is it from a mother company? Is it from a seed round, a VC? How are they basically acquiring the customers they're acquiring? And what's their economic pricing strategy? So where do they sit in the pricing matrix? Are they expensive? Are they cheap? You know, can you see a trend of a competitor? Are they priced higher than you or lower than you? Because there will be a reason. So if we just take a look at this brand here, which is a brand called Wild, who I'm sure most of you are aware of, we love these guys. They're a great kind of D2C success story. They're very young, very new to market. They've got market fit. They've raised some capital and they're scaling pretty aggressively. And you'll start noticing some trends around this brand. So you'll see that, okay, cool, they're using customer reviews, they're using real people in their content, they're looking at sustainability, they're looking at a kind of referral system here, they're looking at incentives to get people to purchase, they're looking at subscriptions. So you start mapping all these similarities from competitors, and then you start noticing actually around the pillars, there are some kind of commonalities going through. In fact, if you screenshotted this slide, you'd basically have a cheat sheet of how to build a D2C brand, because all the ones that are really winning and kind of, scaling very quickly and achieving huge exit valuations will have some of these things or all of these things that you can see in the middle box. So they'll have an average order value that's quite high. They'll get people back quickly. They'll incentivize that first purchase. They'll probably be a subscription brand. They'll have offers. They'll have walkthrough videos, keepsakes, loyalty schemes. So everything in that middle box is what we see with the kind of hero D2C success stories that we've worked with or brands that we haven't worked with. They all have some of these tropes played in. So you can start seeing the trend line of your competitors, what's going on with them, and then analyze yourself against them. Once you've also done that, your competitors are actually an amazing place to start building your customer avatar. So when we talk about customer avatars, we don't mean, the avatar is myself, or the avatar is my friend, or the avatar is what a research company tells me. We think you can actually find avatars through social channels and through looking at your competitors. So the next step after you've done your deep competitor research is to find your customer and then validate your customer. And the way we look at doing this is to look at the competitor's customer base and then try and figure out what else they are buying or would buy.
So this again is another example of the type of audience that we sort of whittled down to once we were doing the food retail brand. So they identified the opportunity, and we started looking at the competitors across the matrix, looked at across everything that they were doing. And then from that, we're able to use a program that dissected the audiences who were interested in those competitor brands. So anybody who had interacted, engaged, followed anything were split down, and their audience were completely dissected. So what you're able to find out is a lot of their interests. You're able to find out the gender split, all of those type of things of people who are actively actually doing it. So instead of just hoping for the best or coming up with an avatar because you think they best fit it, you're actually seeing real life data of people who are actually engaging with your competitors. And once you get a better understanding of that type of person, what they're into, it says here, they're into restaurants, which you would hope for when you're doing a food brand, but then you go into things like sports, which is kind of interesting, especially for this particular social channel that we were dissecting. So once you get a better understanding of them, you can also look across your competitors and look through the abundance of reviews. Reviews are, and social proofing, as everybody knows, is crucial for D2C. And there is so many programs that do them. So dissecting the reviews, looking through, seeing what the pain points are that the consumers are having, and also seeing what they love so much about the product. And once you get a better understanding of that, you can also see the demand from that audience, looking through search volumes, looking to see if anybody's actually looking for what you want to sell, if there is a demand for that type of thing. And then once you get a better understanding of all of that, you can actually start to consider who are they, where are they, and how best can we talk to them? What type of creatives do these people need to see in order to feel connected to? And what are they used to seeing, and what could also disrupt potentially what everybody else is doing?
So this is the kind of old school versus new school model. So people like Kantar, big, consumer research bodies, are amazing at what they do. But unless you've got the budget to bankroll something like that, they're kind of difficult in the sense that it's like a kind of, it's a centralized resource. What we're looking at is a kind of decentralized avatar building system. So taking social channels, breaking them down, and then starting to research the audiences on them. So you can see here, we've written it out, on Facebook, it's skewed, well, it doesn't skew, actually, it's pretty split 50-50 men, women, but it's skewing to a slightly older demographic. So you can kind of research your older audiences there. Instagram skewing slightly female, slightly younger, more editorial audience. Google's an amazing place if you want to figure out what people are searching for. So if you have a product that solves a particular pain point issue for people, you can Google search it, look at search volumes and go, are other people looking for this product or looking for this solution? If they are, how many of them are looking for it? And can I validate that there is an audience there? And TikTok, obviously, is increasingly less so, but initially was a very young focused an audience. So if you're building a kind of product and you want to do some audience research for a product that's skewing younger, then TikTok's obviously a great platform. So point being is you're building an audience based off the data that is kind of semi-readily available with a bit of know-how off these social channels. And they have, as we know, reams and reams of data of what people are doing, what other interests they have, what commonalities in their buying habits there are. So you're kind of validating your hypothesis of going, I think my buyer is this kind of person. You can go and find out if that person actually exists. And when you do actually find out that that cohort of people exists, or that person exists, you can go, right, I want to target this person, and they might be Susan avatar number one. You can go into Facebook, you can go into social channels and go, right, how many Susans are there actually readily available on these markets, on these channels to talk to? And then also, what is it going to cost me to reach these people? So you can see, okay, cool, I'm going to reach 51% of 24 million available potential customers to this product. Now, obviously, this is a very broad audience demographic, but it's giving you an indication of what resource you're going to need. And it's also, most importantly, it's data validating your assumptions that there is actually a end consumer for the product that you want to create. You come up with your idea, you've done your competitor research, you've started building your avatar and your audience, and you've validated it through social platforms. The next thing you obviously need to do is consider D2C trends in your customer experience and in your brand and product experience, because retail is a different experience to D2C. Here are some, definitely not all. These are like, there are, I mean, probably 4 or 5 times the amount of kind of trends and tropes that we're seeing go through D2C brands. But for health and beauty in particular as well, these are some of the kind of major trends that we're seeing across the board with new D2C brands that are doing well.
We sort of touched on this in the last webinar. I'm not sure how many of you were there at the last one with me and Tash, but essentially understanding these D2C trends is crucial for the fact if you are pivoting towards D2C. So I think the first thing being personalization. 80% of consumers are more likely to make a purchase when brands offered a personalized experience. We're going to touch on a couple of those who do this incredibly well across D2C, and people should be considering that. Sustainability, of course, should be at the forefront of everything. So you should be considering sustainability, environmentally sourced packaging and recyclable packaging, of course. Entry perks, we'll touch on this with the 3 key metrics that we follow, but ensuring that you're able to cut through the noise amongst all of your competitors is absolutely super important. And you'll see once you start to hear all of these trends, once you're caught in a bunch of funnels of lots of beauty brands, you'll see that most of these D2C brands are doing this, and you'll be like, oh, there's an entry perk. That's straight away cutting through the noise. Influencers, obviously there was a lot of people hoping for the death knell of the influencer a couple of years ago. And I think TikTok has provided a great lifeline, so has Instagram. And I think that essentially having real people validate the product and being a reflection of your audience is incredibly crucial to D2C. And we see it work consistently across all of our brands who use generated content. Consultations and quizzes, making it interactive and making it feel like a bespoke product to the consumer, make it feel like they're being heard and that they're being listened to, and that they have to go through several different things in order to find the perfect product for them. And of course, experts. So having tying into the social proofing side of things with influencers, and of course, all of the reviews that I was talking about before, experts should be considered for D2C. I think especially in the beauty world, when you're putting something on your skin or you're ingesting something, you need a level of trust from your consumer, and they need to know that other people are doing it and that a doctor has said it's good, or whatever it might be. So I think experts should be considered in this as well. And these D2C trend learnings, now you've kind of spotted them out. I'm pretty sure, I mean, it happened to me once we started building this. I was like, oh, well, they're even doing it. And they're not in beauty. They're like a beer brand or something. And I'm like, oh, great. They've ticked all 6 boxes there. So that's good.
So just to put it into some reality with some actual brands that you'll see knocking around. So on the top left, personalization. This is a brand called FFS. They're a razor company. From the off, they encourage you to personalize your razor. In the middle there, you've got a sustainability brand. We've already touched on them. Wild, again, that's been, I mean, it's a deodorant. So it's like a huge, they're entering as a kind of huge shoulder category basically, but their whole piece is around subscription and sustainability. And then on the right there, you've got an entry perk, which is being led by Hey Bud, which is a kind of, what do you call them? Like they're a very aggressive D2C kind of early adopter, innovative brand. And they're very aggressive on things like entry perks and getting people and turning customers' heads basically.
There's an abundance of D2C brands that are using influencers in the right way. So I think you could throw a stick out into D2C and you'd probably hit an influencer doing an incredibly good job with this. So Get Nourished was the example that I've chosen here. Get Nourished did a really great influencer campaign. Nourished, which is a vitamin that you kind of is a bespoke thing. You go through a whole thing in order to create your own vitamin. Consultations and quizzes. This is something that I use. Skin and Me, I think is absolutely excellent. You basically have to go through a whole consultation. You have to take pictures of your face looking all ugly in the morning, and essentially they create a skincare off the back of that, and it works incredibly well. And for the experts, this is a brand that we work with, Yorzuki. They started doing collagen. They do a lot of liposomal, and they do vitamin C and vitamin D and lots of different things. But with their collagen, they brought in an expert, Dr. Nina, and that worked incredibly well across their paid social channels, having that expert authoritative figure talking about how groundbreaking their collagen drink is. And of course, that is a kind of saturated market, but they were able to cut through really well, and that worked across all of the Facebook and Instagram ads. So yeah.
So there's some D2C trends. There are many more, but there are some of them. This is, I talk about Holy Grail metrics all the time because this is basically the fundamental economics of any D2C brand. Tash and Tim did a whole presentation on it last month, so we're only going to touch on it briefly just now. But the Holy Grail metrics are basically your CPA, which is a store level cost of acquisition. How much does it cost you to get a customer in? The AOV, which is your average order value. So what is the customer spending on average with your brand? And the CLV, which is the lifetime value of that customer in their journey with your brand. And you can see the importance of wrapping these in and thinking about these from the off. So like that slide I said to screenshot at the top of the presentation, you'll notice that most good D2C brands have a high average order value, and they are very big on subscription and lifetime value, because you can see here, if you're spending anywhere between 15 to 25 pounds acquiring a customer on these direct consumer channels, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever, and their average order value is £8, so you're certainly not profitable on first point of purchase, and then they're only coming back and spending another £8 more with you maybe 6 months later, economically, this is not a viable route to market for the current product set you have. So if you're spending 25 quid, get someone in, they buy an £8 lip balm, they use it for 6 months, they come back 6 months later, buy one more £8 lip balm, 2 years have passed, and that's basically your economic model. That doesn't result in decent profitability at all. And actually all you're really generating there is what I would consider kind of vanity revenue. Obviously, you flip it, keep the CPA the same. So the CPA can sit between 15 and 25 pounds, for a beauty brand, depending on price point. Get the customer spending 45 pounds because you're either bundling something up or you've got a more premium pricing strategy. And then you're getting them back again with that loyalty piece. So you're building in subscription, you're building in consumer loyalty, you're building in gamification, you're building in email systems, all this good stuff that gets the customer coming back and back again. This obviously is a viable economic model for D2C as a route to market. So again, we spoke a lot about Holy Grail metrics, but when you are building up your kind of product range, and we'll talk about it with the brand that we recently did a strategy lab with, it's so important to get these right from the off. Otherwise you are it's just not a viable route to market. So whistle stop, obviously, but we've identified an opportunity, the competitors have been analyzed, you've built an audience, you've validated that audience, you've built in some D2C trends, so the consumer is kind of gratified that they're kind of playing in the right space and your brand is playing in the right space. You're making sure that your Holy Grail metrics are factored and built into the product range and the kind of growth plan. You're now going to look at creating your product range / D2C play as a business. And then obviously the fun starts and you start taking it to market and testing and learning it. If you want to get a copy of this presentation and go through it at your own leisure, or you want to talk to me and Tim about how you might be able to start to reimagine or think about your brand differently for a D2C play, that's my email address. That's a picture of me when I had longer hair. Then obviously,
nice picture. It's a lovely picture.
Get in touch with us.
You mentioned customer reviews, mysterious ellipsis. Do you think consumers still trust these for beauty or more generally? That's a really, really good question. It depends on in which kind of where they're seeing it and psychologically where they're at with that particular brand and the part of their journey and all those kind of things. I think when I'm thinking about creative, which obviously I do as a creative director, the reviews are pretty fundamental to the copy and to the paid social elements. I think paid social is slightly different to perhaps distrust in certain kind of trust pilots or whatever it might be, or any particular products or any particular sites. For paid social, because you're essentially, it's like at a market and you have to stop somebody and go, hello, this is a really good product. And they're like, is it? And you're like, yes, this is what people said. In that context, I think they are trusted. I think they are crucial to that type of thing because of the nature of the communication between the consumer and the brand. Whereas customer reviews in perhaps other parts psychologically, I wouldn't want to answer, but potentially there could be some distrust in some of those.
I think there's a nuance. If there's a review that's completely ridiculous and over the top, then you might distrust it. But ultimately, customer reviews for a lot of brands we work with tend to be the difference that makes a difference. Social validation, social proof, you buy from your peers, recommendations, and we are all to a degree peers rather than what the brand's telling you. So do you still trust them? Yeah, I think you probably do. Are there any products that aren't right for D2C? Yes. Many, usually lower price products. I think if you do really well at point of sale. And it's like a £2-3 impulse purchase, and it's something long lasting like a lip balm. I think it's really difficult to make D2C work for you because it's hard to get that kind of, that repeat custom, that profitability on first purchase. So I think if you're a fast moving, low value retail based product, I think that works really well. Obviously it does because you're succeeding. I think online, it's going to be difficult for you to validate spending £20 or £15 or even £10 acquiring a customer who only spend £4 or £5 and they don't come back again for ages. So there are definitely products that do not work yet D2C.
This is a really good question.
Which one is it then? Right, another question, we'll answer it live. You've touched on the teams that most retail brands currently employing the skills of most retail brands in-house. How long does it take to upskill the average in-house team you've worked with for D2C? I don't know, doing a couple of days, right? No, I think so we do this actually. We've done this for a few businesses now where they're making not a full pivot, but a partial pivot to D2C as a route to market. And we do upskill people across marketing, across operations, across sales, across brand, across all that stuff. I think
what we currently run, which is the training thing that we do, takes usually it's like a couple of months.
It's about 2 to 3 months. Yeah.
So we just finished one with a German beauty company who were absolutely wonderful and incredibly efficient, brilliant people. And I thought there was going to be a lot of difficulty in that, given that there was a immediacy in the language barrier, but also the fact that we kind of didn't really know what kind of restrictions were going to be given the difference in us. So, and I think after 2 months that it was kind of overwhelmingly lovely after when we up leveled their team, how much it changed their business, and they've now gone on to create a retail brand and a D2C brand and things like that, and are doing incredibly well. It took us 2 to 3 months with the German brand, and I think it was incredibly valuable to them. Obviously, I would say that, but you could just tell, you could see the difference.
2 to 3 months to start the change of thinking, and then from there it's an onward constant development. This is a constantly changing space. So, but yeah, it's definitely possible, and we've done it. Are the best D2C products fast moving products? Yes. This goes to lifetime value piece, right? So you think about those holy grail metrics again: CPA, AOV, CLV. If your product is faster moving, then people are going to come back quicker and they're going to buy again more and more. So you're building up the customer lifetime value piece a lot, which actually is what makes a lot of these big beauty brands so highly valued to VCs and people that want to acquire, is that customer lifetime value piece. So yes, to a degree, it's not the whole piece. Obviously, there's 2 other metrics in there. Well, there's lots of metrics really in there, but yeah, to a degree, the lifetime value piece is important because, again, an example, if you buy a luxury, lovely product that costs 60 quid, and because it's a kind of keepsake and a precious thing, and you use it once every 3 weeks or something as a special treat, and that customer's not buying that product again until, let's say, next Christmas, again, you're just going to create a lot of initial revenue and a lot of kind of what I would consider vanity revenue, but you're not going to see that real kind of profitability arc turn because that customer's not coming back again quick enough. And so the lifetime value is kind of dropping off a little bit.
Lovely. Who have been a standout brand for D2C? I think that's a nice question.
Well, you can tell because I put them in twice. I really like Wild, the deodorant company. I also know them a little bit. We don't work with them, but I think they're amazing. I think the bravery to take on a category as large and wrapped up by heritage and retail as deodorant is cool to challenge that industry. And I think if you go through, what we discussed, the trends, the way their economics probably, I imagine, stack up, they've kind of hit every single marker there. Sustainability, building a tribe, subscription, first purchase incentive, referrals, like they're just, and creatively, they're just speaking the right kind of language for that D2C environment. So, and you can see by the way they're growing, obviously quite quickly, they've done really well. So I'm a big fan of those guys.
I like Hims and Hers. I think they're great. They're like female and male hygiene companies. And for a relatively kind of taboo subject, I think they do incredibly well in terms of messaging and the pillars that they pull. But I think a company that we've worked with, they're called Yorzuki, and they have completely the right mindset in terms of going D2C and understanding all of the nuances of what that takes, and not just understanding, but throwing themselves so completely and utterly ridiculously headfirst into all of those things that you really see the snowball effect of how effective those things are. And it really does validate everything that we've kind of just said in this presentation, really. So I really like your Zuki, plus they're delicious products.
In taste.
In taste.
We'll do one or two more questions, then we'll pass back to yourself, Sally. So if you are a medium-sized indie brand that currently sells through traditional bricks and mortar retail, what advice would you give to make a move to D2C? I mean, we'll probably have different things here. My advice would be economic advice. Make sure your product line stacks up on D2C. Make sure that you won't know what you can get as a cost per acquisition until you start doing meaningful advertising, but you can know that you basically should be upping your average order value, bundling stuff together and making sure you have a product that people buy again relatively quickly. From there, it becomes a very strategic and tactical game of building the right kind of Shopify site, building the right tech stack into that site, making sure your conversion works, running the right ads, running the right creative. I mean, there's a lot of work to do in going D2C. I think without diving into it for 3 hours, the main thing to start from my point of view to get right is the economic fundamentals of your business. Will it work online? Will it work D2C?
Economics are important, but obviously I'm a creative, so I'd go for a different answer, which is good. All of that I would absolutely agree with. I think the level of research that you put into competitors, I think, is crucial, and seeing what they're doing, kind of like how we've touched on, and also understanding that the experience of walking into bricks and mortar and being able to see the product and feel the product and have that experience where you're outside of your home and not on your phone. And the psychological difference between that and sitting on your phone when you're about to eat dinner and there's the TV on and the kids are crying over here and you're going through Facebook, sick of your old friend from school who's just posted another smug post. Yeah, all right. And then you see an advert. That's a completely different psychological principle to actually even consider. So I think it's about understanding that is a completely different mindset. And as we said, reimagining the whole thing really is kind of underserving how important that you do have to reimagine. It's a whole thing of research and in immersing yourself in that world and of that consumer who's happened to go through, as I said before, the market being stopped by my product is completely different to on the shop floor. So that would be my only thing. Great.
We'll do one more question and we'll wrap it up. How do you go about finding your closest competitors? Good question. I'll do Google, you do paid. I would basically start by searching the thing that you think that you've got, basically. So you've got a skin product that takes care of eczema or something. I would start searching that on Google, because Google will serve you your competitors. So you'll instantly start finding people that are going to kind of be competing with you on that channel. To Tim's point, it's like, to use your market analogy of going around saying to people, stop, look at me, buy my product. It's like, it's going to the different kind of places where that market exists, like Google, like paid social, and finding the other people, going and talking to the other brands that are doing it, metaphorically, not literally, although you could pick up the phone to your competitors, but it's going, right, I've got this problem, Googling it, and what will happen is the hordes of competitors will try and come to you. So you go, well, there you go, there's all my competitors, because they're actually angling after you because they think you're a consumer. Same vibe with paid social, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. I think by using the Google as an initial kind of kickstart, the initial sort of spark to the flame, I think seeing who's actually paying for that space at the top of those keywords you search for, going, okay, so they're actually putting money into this. And then the people who are doing incredibly well in terms of SEO, underneath them and going, okay, well, they're obviously getting hits and they're getting people reading their blogs and all that kind of stuff. I would click on all of them. I would go on all their websites. I'd explore. I would add some things to the cart and not buy anything.
Yeah.
And then I would fall completely headfirst into all of their funnels, their Facebook funnels, and then you will just be targeted off the back of the fact that you've been on their website, you've been adding things to the cart, you've been looking at all the products. So I think that's always the best way. When I'm first starting out with an initial brand, I will go on all the competitors, and then I'll spend the next 2 weeks getting incredibly annoyed, seeing who's the biggest, like the one who's targeted me just all the time in terms of frequency, but also how are they saying it, what are they doing, and things like that. And I think you get a great understanding because you're just on your phone, and it's actually a quite easy way of doing competitor research in the initial stages. So so both of those things I think are a good way of doing it.
Great. Sally, over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. It was a really fascinating discussion and definitely a whistle-stop tour through so much information. And I loved the fact that we learned that you could sell passes D2C. I'm definitely in for that. Do please get in touch with either Luke if you have further questions, or if you just want to come to CW, we can pass those on. Obviously, we'll have a recording that will appear on the YouTube channel for CW in the coming days. We do have some future sessions of these amazing masterclasses in the calendar, so keep an eye out on the newsletter, which comes out on a Friday, on the website, and of course on social. We're just about, as I said, to launch our season of events for the autumn during September and October, most pressing of which we've got the Soil Association, who have their annual Organic Beauty Week next week, and we're doing an event with them on Thursday. So watch out for news about how to sign up for that. It's free to members, of course. And then, of course, the CW Beauty Awards for 2021. The lunch is on the 24th of September. It's in real life this year. We're delighted. We're very excited. Please be assured that whilst, of course, we're beside ourselves with excitement, we are taking all precautions to make sure that we keep everybody as safe as possible. And we really look forward to seeing you there. And finally, we are also in the midst of the selection process for CEW Accelerate. And so there will be more news on that in the coming weeks for the brands that have applied for that. We're very excited. And that's just going through that at the moment. And then one more thing, the team will kill me if I don't mention, is we have our Achiever Awards on the 29th of November. We're going to be asking our members to nominate Digital Innovations of the Year Award nominees, and also our Young Achiever of the Year Award. So if you have anybody in your businesses or yourself that you'd like to put forward, we're going to be sending around the nomination forms on that. But thank you guys, it was fantastic, and until next time, that's a wrap. Have a good evening. Thanks.